Punam Patel is the Emmy-nominated star of Special, which drops its second season on Netflix on May 20th. I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby, and Punam, the series originally started as a short series. These were short 15 minutes episode, but for this new season, you've expanded to be a full-length comedy. How did that? How do you think that has changed the show?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ryan's a brilliant writer. And so even with a quarter-hour series, he was able to fit so much story into that. But I think he really was able to play with characters, play with their plot lines, and just expand on everyone so much more and just dig so much deeper in such a more meaningful way with this half-hour format. Because we got introduced to a lot in that first season, but I feel like in season 2, we finally get to actually dig in and see like what these people are really about. And, in first season, you kind of just see Kim in relation to Ryan. And in season 2, you kind of get to go home with her and be like, what's actually going on there? How did she get to this place? How did she get to become the person she is? Who's her family? Who's she fucking? It's a really fun journey.
I would imagine that. Now, did you and Ryan, you and Ryan work so well together and have become in many ways like this perfect comedy duo. Did you talk to him before the season started about like your ideas for Kim, or did it all really just come from him?
Yeah, Ryan is an extremely amazing creator in the sense that he hires people he really trusts, and then he really lets me in particular have a lot of say in kind of like who I think Kim is and how her family would talk to her. Ryan was extremely respectful, also knowing that I have a full Indian family in this season. He doesn't have an Indian family. So he did really trust me to be like, actually, I think, my dad would probably say something like this, or an Indian father might feel this way, or an Indian mother might say something like this. And not just Ryan, like everyone from all the writers to props to set design, they did such a thoughtful job in not only making sure things were accurate, but they knew the type of Indian I am. I'm Gujarati. My family's from the state of Gujarat. And they're like, props was like, we specifically researched Gujarati food that you would eat on this specific holiday. And I just don't think I'd ever been on a set that was that thoughtful and considerate and being like, oh yeah, I'm not just like a minority accessory. Like I'm a full person. They're taking the time to get to know me. And Ryan, obviously him and I have become like best friends. So he obviously really took into consideration all these details about not just being Indian, but about being the character of Kim as a full, like well-rounded person that I just really appreciate.
It's interesting because the gay guy straight girl relationship is something we've seen, and yet this does feel different. It feels fresher. It's a new take on it. What do you think it is about these two characters that kind of stands out?
Well, I think first and foremost, we both come from marginalized populations. So even though Ryan and I have had different lives and different journeys, we can relate on what it feels like to not only be the other, but always be the only one like us in a room. Most rooms, with work that I've been in or Ryan has been in, we are the only ones. He's the only disabled person or perhaps the only gay person. I'm always the only Indian woman. Sometimes I'm the only curvy woman. And so I think we really bonded on that. And what I love about the show is Ryan so brilliantly maintains this delicate balance of really celebrating what is other about us, but not making that our entire identity. Really showing how that influences who we are, but that's not all we are. And I think that's what really brings our characters together. And I think both Ryan and Kim's characters are both deeply flawed. And that's just one of my favorite things to see when it comes to TV and film is extremely human, extremely flawed people. Because that's who you want to root for the most, because that's who you relate to the most, because that's what we all are. We all are fucked up and make mistakes, and we can all be assholes, and we all don't always say and do the right things. But deep down, we're trying our best. And I feel like that's all you can really ask for.
I think that's one of the strengths of the show is that these are two people who who own what makes them different, and yet at the same time they still struggle with it just like everybody else. um, with Kim, I think we learn a lot about, and you mentioned the family. What was it about those family dynamics that you think work so well with Kim?
I think they're so specific to her, but they're so universal to everyone. Like everyone has like critical parents. That's what parents do. As they're raising you, they're meant to criticize you. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I think the dynamics of, I think there's just something so tragic of realizing she's working so hard to fit into this white, thin world that she doesn't fit into. And then you see her family, and there's just something so devastating that she feels like she doesn't fit in there either. And I think that's a really like cool thing to explore, like especially as a child of immigrants, when you're caught between two worlds and you're like, well, I don't fit into this white American world fully, and I don't fully fit into the Indian world either because I was born here. So where do I go? Where do I belong? And I feel like innately as humans, we're always looking for that sense of belonging. And I think that just adds so many layers to Kim's journey, because ultimately, you know, not to be so Brene Brown on it, but it's just like you belong to yourself. You belong around your people, and it doesn't just look like one thing. But yeah, I think showing her family also that at the end of the day, as much of like a brown sheep she might be, they still love her and care for her, are going to be there for her no matter what.
I love that the dynamic, particularly you have a wonderful scene with Kim and her father, where they both have kind of different perspectives, and yet you see each perspective so beautifully, and they both make sense. Was the whole family aspect one of your favorite aspects of this season?
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, because I've never been on a set with that many Indian people. Like, I didn't know they allowed more than one of us at a time, because that's just never happened. And so that was absolutely so refreshing, because I like looked around and I was like, oh my God, is this what white people feel like all the time? Like, this is crazy. Like, it was just such a celebration. And also because I think representation is getting better, but I think, you know, a lot of marginalized populations are still painted very one dimensional. And it was just so fun to be like, this is a family of characters. They happen to be Indian. That influences, again, who they are, what they're doing in these scenes. But it's like each person is their own character that makes up this family. And, you know, the scene you're referencing with the actor Ajay Mehta, who plays my father, was really incredible just to help create, because, you know, Ryan wrote it and he did an amazing job. And then we were able to really, like, you know, he reached out to me, and Ryan and I talked about what that conversation would look like, with a father who's an immigrant who worked so hard to bring his daughter here, and how disappointing it must be to be like, hold on, I worked my ass off and you're in debt. Like, he must feel like he failed. And, you know, you have so much empathy for her as well, because it does cost money to fit in and to maintain a certain look and a certain standard. So you really empathize with her too, because she is really just trying her best. And, you know, I think it's really easy for us all to preach and be like, be yourself, love yourself no matter what, be your own person. It's like, yeah, well, that's great. But we also live in a world and live in certain societal standards of beauty that sometimes makes it really hard. And we're only human, and we do absorb those things, and they do affect our behaviors, and we can work at them. We're all works in progress. But, you know, I feel very confident as a person, like Punam personally. I feel really happy with the way I look. I feel happy where I am in my life. Like, I'm a pretty happy, confident person, but I don't think I'm ever going to reach a point in my life where I don't feel insecure, or I don't feel like, oh my gosh, should my hair look like this, or should my skin look like this, or should my body be a certain size? Because that's the messaging we're like constantly surrounded by. So we can't help but absorb some of that. So I really liked that you don't villainize Kim or think she's shallow or a failure for doing that. You really understand how she's gotten to that point and why she would have.
It's interesting that you say that, because I have to wonder, you know, when you're playing some of those scenes, does it is it easier? Do you tap into your own insecurities to play that? Are you the type of actor that likes to tap into your own, or does it awaken insecurities in yourself?
Oh yeah, there's certain scenes when we were shooting it, I like left at the end of a day and I was like, oh, I just like triggered myself for like 7 hours. I need to like not talk for a day. Maybe that's not proper acting form. Maybe like people that really study acting would be like, don't do that. That's not good acting. But I'm just an extremely empathetic person as is, and I'm a very sensitive person, which I think is a strength. And so I feel things very deeply. So even when I was reading the scripts for the first time and learning about Kim's journey, even if I specifically haven't been there, I really can empathize with her because we've all been in some form of rock bottom or some form of a moment in our life where we're like, oh my God, how did I get here? Like, how did I let this happen? But this life, that just happens sometimes.
There's a scene, and I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a scene later in the season where Kim is actually the only woman of color in a room. And we hear about this idea of representation, but sometimes I think people shrink down the meaning of representation. What was that scene like to film? Because I mean, for me, just as a viewer, it was uncomfortable, but I wonder what it was like from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the optics of it are kind of like, ugh. Everyone was super sweet and in on the joke of it. So, like all these white men I was surrounded by were absolutely playing into it. Um, but yeah, it is very familiar. I started, I would say, in Chicago in the comedy scene. It's saturated with straight white men. For a long time, that's the only people that were also rewarded. I would say across many industries, but in the Chicago comedy scene in particular, I was really fortunate enough to be able to work my way up and ended up on a stage at Second City, and that was incredible. But again, there's so many spaces where I am the only person, and I think what's so great about that scene is it really speaks to this idea that certain places and certain people treat diversity like a trend or treat it like something that's on a checklist. And I think with representation, people forget about normalization as well. I think they can just slap a brown face on a screen and our work is done. But they'll still, not acknowledge anything about the character. And it's like, I've auditioned for so many things where it's like, well, this is clearly written for a white woman. And when I get it, they're not going to change the name unless I ask. They're probably not going to even acknowledge the fact that I'm not a white woman unless I bring something up. And I shouldn't have to do that. But I do because I care. And everyone I've ever asked to be like, can you change my name to an Indian name or whatever, has been absolutely receptive to it. So it's been wonderful, but I really would love to get to a place where we're not being hired just to fill a quota or just to like save someone's ass. Like, oh, okay, we hired our one, like in that scene, like we hired our one woman, our one brown girl. Oh, bonus, she's also not skinny. Like we killed 3 birds with 1 stone kind of thing. Because I think not just for the sake of the marginalized person, but for the sake of everyone around them, you're really missing out on a lot of potential within that person if you put them within that box.
With the series, ending, I'm just curious. This show really does break so much new ground in terms of sitcoms and what a comedy show can really be about. So what do you think, what have you learned most about either yourself or just the business that you're in through this show?
I think I've learned that like so many things that you don't see on TV are actually possible. It is possible to have a show with a gay disabled lead played by someone who actually is gay and disabled. It is possible to have a curvy brown Indian woman in a bikini looking amazing on screen. It is possible to have multiple disabled actors or multiple Indian actors on screen together, and nothing's going to explode. People are still going to watch it. People will still be able to relate. I don't know how the other side of the business works, the people that are making decisions, the people who are in charge, maybe the reason why so much content ends up looking so one way, but I don't know if they're scared of isolating audiences or what, but I'll tell you right now, like, I've gotten messages from so many different types of people that related to my character specifically that I never thought would be able to relate to it. So I think it's really powerful to show how similar we all really can be, even in our very specific stories. And that's something that should be celebrated. So I hope when people see a show like Special, they realize, oh, this is possible. We can do this. We don't need to be so scared. Like, we can really knock down a lot of walls and actually be rewarded for it, and people will love it. It's so refreshing. And, at a certain point, what's really amazing is you'll watch the show and you won't think, oh, I'm watching a gay disabled guy, oh, I'm watching an Indian person. You're just watching a show you love about people that you really care about. And like, isn't that the ultimate goal, to like normalize all of us?
Yes, indeed it is. The second season of Special drops on Netflix on May 20th. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for more interviews throughout the season. Punam Patel, it's such a great, so great to talk to you. Thank you so much.